Working with recording artists in person is way different than just emailing your latest hot beat. Looking back, some of my biggest lessons in the studio had nothing to do with expensive gear, fancy plugins, or secret mixing techniques. They came from mistakes. Mistakes that cost me time, mistakes that made the sessions harder, and mistakes that could have been avoided if someone warned me earlier. In this video, I'm sharing my top 5 studio mistakes that I learned the hard way, so that way you can avoid them too. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, mistake number 1 is not being proactive. That's right. This was really back when I was a young pup in the game and I just started finally learning how to use Pro Tools properly and, gain staging and using my interface and compressor. So I felt like I was starting to be hot stuff. I was finally getting a consistent client base of artists who wanted to record with me and I was getting paid for it. So I was like, hey, I'm here. I'm doing my thing. I'm starting to feel myself a little bit, but in that process, especially when I started to get more and more familiar with certain artists, that's when I actually started to get a little bit more comfortable, a little bit too comfortable. I can recall one story that I was working with one recording artist. He brought a friend over to do a feature verse. In the process, I was recording the main artist. The person wanted to do their feature verse, and I was totally lost in Pro Tools. I didn't really have the beat lined up with the tempo properly. All my producers and engineers know how how bad that is. You got to lock in the tempo properly. I didn't have that done, so I couldn't really figure out where I was supposed to be in the Pro Tools grid. I looked up and then the recording artist was looking at me like, you messed up, right? So in that process, the thing that I learned is to never get too comfortable. Always be on your toes. Always make sure that you're following your process correctly. Make sure that you have the tempo locked in properly. Make sure that everything is lined up to the grid properly in Pro Tools or Studio One, whatever you're using to work with recording artists, and never get too relaxed. People pay us for the service. It's kind of like being a barber or being someone who's like maybe an auto mechanic. People come to us, they have a certain expectation of consistency and quality, and we can never get too relaxed, too comfortable, because one mistake can not only make you look bad, it can make your client look bad, and it can make that client's friend or associate or featured artist kind of look at the whole situation as janky. All right, mistake number 2 is not understanding my template. That's right, this was way back in the day when Pro Tools templates were not out there. Nobody was selling templates. No one knew where to get templates. You had to make the template yourself or know someone who knows someone. And I knew someone who knew someone who gave me their template, but I never really took the time to really understand what was happening. I just took the template, understood that when I dragged and dropped the vocals into certain spots, it just lit up with a bunch of different effects with the ad-libs and the background vocals. I was like, oh, okay, cool. That's cool. This is kind of like, easy money. All I got to do is record people, drop them in certain parts in the DAW. Stuff sounds pretty cool. Man, big mistake, man. I should have proactively went through each part and understood what was doing what. I can remember a time I popped up in another engineer's recording studio, had to work with an artist. The artist came through. The artist was working on some stuff. They was doing their vocals. Everything was going good in the session, right? It was one ad lib that this artist was like, hey man, you're gonna have to lower that ad lib down. It's throwing me off. I kept looking around. I'm like, man, I cannot find that ad lib. He took off his headphones, starting to stare a hole through me like, hey, Desmond, bro, I can't finish the song because you're not turning down the volume of the ad lib. I could not find the ad lib for the life of me, man. I was so embarrassed. The artist was super frustrated. Had to pull him out the booth. We had to just keep scrolling through. Like, is it that? Is it that? Is it that? Is it that? Man, he was hot. But eventually I was able to turn around. I apologized, gave the artist a little bit of extra time, and fortunately he wasn't too mad at me. But the thing is, at the end of the day, that's 100% on me. I should have taken the time to understand the template, where everything is, and just not gotten too comfortable with just being okay. I should have reverse engineered the template, knew what everything was, so that way if a scenario like that were to pop up, I know exactly where to go to find what. So guys, you're out there buying the templates from the different content creators and whatnot, please take the time to look at each different thing, each different spot, totally understand and comprehend what each effect and plugin does, so that way you won't find yourself in a sticky situation with the artist who's hot and then you're in somebody else's studio and they're looking at you like you don't know what you're doing. That's a big mistake that I made, and I don't want you to make it as well. So make sure you use that tip whenever you're working with artists. All right. And my third studio mistake was not studying my DAW. And this is, I want to make the distinction between not studying my DAW and not understanding my template, just because they're different. They sound like they're related, but they actually aren't. So when I say not studying my DAW, I mean studying and understanding the different features. If you click this one button, this shortcut won't work. If you move this down and you toggle this feature will no longer work. So it's not just about following the path of a template. It's about understanding how your DAW works. Guys, I can remember being in the studio and not knowing that Pro Tools did have a feature that I thought it didn't. And I had to, unfortunately, kind of fib a little bit, had to lie a little bit to recording artists, say, oh man, the program can't do it. But it's not that Pro Tools couldn't do it. I just didn't know that it had the capacity to do it. And guys, you know, Pro Tools is very powerful. It has a lot of moving parts, has a lot of pieces to it. A lot of people think that it's complicated, but it is really not. You just have to dedicate your time to understanding each part and each place in the actual DAW and know how it works. I put together a guide on different Pro Tools shortcuts that I've actually used in the studio. So guys, make sure you click the link in the description. Check out that free guide that I put together. You know, tutorials are cool, but man, really look at the manual of whatever DAW that you're using, because you need to understand what it's capable of. So that way, if you're in the studio with artists and they make a request, you know that the DAW has the ability to do it, and you're not just kind of making stuff up on the fly just because you didn't take the initiative to understand the DAW. So that's another mistake that I made, and unfortunately it probably impacted a couple people's songs, and I don't want you to make that same mistake. So use that gem, take the initiative, and learn your DAW. All right, and the fourth studio mistake I made when recording artists is actually taking things personally. That's right, guys. When it comes to the recording studio, music, the creative field, you know, a lot of it is emotion based. A lot of it is feeling based. So, you know, no matter what, if you're really into it, you're really into music, you're mixing your personal life with your emotions. And these are the ways that we're expressing things that happen to us or friends or family. And we're communicating via music, via energy. So since we tend to be in that space and since we tend to be in that frequency, it can be difficult to separate things. And you can start to take everything personally. And the thing is, it's like the analogy that I made earlier, you know, working on music as far as, you know, the recording engineer role, the producer who's, you know, actually recording artists in the studio. You have to look at it again, like essentially like you're a barber. People are coming in for the service and they're expecting this level of quality. And if you're not giving that to them, they're going to start to get frustrated. They're going to start to get agitated. They're going to start to get short with you, and they could possibly have an attitude with you, and that this has happened to me a few times, is, taking harsh critique in the studio personally. But really at the end of the day, I have to understand that 9 times out of 10, I just wasn't as experienced enough in the recording role, and the critiques were actually valid, and I shouldn't have taken them directly to heart. And once again, guys, again, we are wrapping our emotions in a lot of this musical stuff, but know how to separate the two. There's one thing for an artist to criticize your skills recording them and getting to the final songs, and there's another thing for them to, attack you and criticize you personally as a human being. Those are two separate and distinct things. And in the beginning, you're taking your licks, you're taking your bruisings, you're getting your battle scars in the beginning, and you can't expect to have the level of confidence, the level of authority in the beginning as you will 5 years later or 7 years later. You know what a person is trying to express by what, if they're saying, I can't hear myself. Is it that they need their volume and the headphones turned up? Is it that their vocals are too low? Is it that the beat is too loud? Now, these are just the little nuances that you're going to pick up as you start to record artists, and things like that, they can become a chain reaction. If you don't know how to decipher or translate what a recording artist is trying to say, maybe early on in the session, that can have a a, kind of a tumbling effect much later where they start to get agitated. So, another thing about working with recording artists in person is knowing how to translate what they're saying to what they're actually trying to express. And that's another skill set all in its own. But once again, guys, another mistake that I made was taking harsh critique personally. It made me slower, it made me anxious working through the DAW trying to record people. So guys, don't take it personally. It's just a frustration that the artist is having. All right, and the fifth studio mistake that I made working with recording artists is undervaluing my people skills. And this kind of gets back to parts of number 4 that I was speaking about a moment ago, as far as translating what an artist is saying versus what they're actually trying to express. And that's a skill, that's a talent, that takes time. Understanding just the little nuances of what an artist is doing is going to make you much stronger as a either engineer or producer who's just working with recording artists in your studio. And that's a thing that's going to also help to separate you from other people. Now, there's lots of producers, engineers who are currently going to music school who are going to come out with all kinds of technical and scientific information about sound and recording and the proper way to use a mic and things like that. But they still have to get out there in the trenches to develop those people skills because, people are different. People communicate in different ways. People have different personalities and attitudes, and people look for different things when it comes to a recording engineer or producer who's recording them. And a way to stand out is just them wanting to be around you, them wanting to work with you. You could be better at people skills and pretty solid at recording and creating final songs with them, and another person could be substantially better than you, but that person just lacks the people skills. They don't know how to navigate a room. They don't know how to direct a song. They don't know how to give some pushback to a recording artist to get them to have a better take. And you have multiple takes, and then you can start to A and B different takes and say, okay, which one should we go with? I think you can say this hook with a little bit more aggression, things like that. Them being able to drive away knowing, okay, this engineer, this producer pushed me or communicated with me in a way that makes me want to go back to see them. So that's another thing that's going to help you out a lot. That's another thing that I really undervalued because I didn't go to audio school or anything like that. I had to learn from other people. That was a big insecurity that I had, and I didn't know that the people skills part was actually a superpower, and that's another way that I was able to make the distinction between me and other people, something that I undervalued, and I don't want you guys to undervalue that in yourselves. So guys, if you didn't go the traditional route, but you still have a base of people who want to consistently see you, cherish that. Understand how valuable that is, and understand that not everyone, even people who are more skilled than you, actually have. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. There's a lot of scars, a lot of learning the hard way. So I just want to share this good game with you guys. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And also in the comments, please let me know some of your top studio mistakes. Did you forget to record an artist? Did you delete a backup? Did you, have a corrupted file in a session? What happened to you? Please share these stories because a lot of people can learn from it, and we want to help people not make the same mistakes that we made. So my name is Desmond A. I'll be back with more great videos. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all soon. Peace.